history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Good morning, everyone. I am Priscilla Jenny Mambella. This is a noonday on Focus on Liberia, and I am your host. A noonday broadcast on Focus on Liberia invites us to dialogue around social justice issues, emphasizing gender justice. A noonday challenges societal attitudes and promotes a culture of respect and equality. We are seeking to create a just and equal world, focusing on eradicating, challenging systemic discrimination based on gender, race, and socioeconomic status, among other discriminatory barriers. In our strive for a new day of social reform, we advocate for social justice, gender equality, and a world where human rights and dignity are upheld for everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Today we have with us Mr. Aaron Weah. I'm sorry. We have with us someone I admire and have high regard for, Mr. Aaron Weah. He probably doesn't remember, but he worked in partnership or organization he worked with, or he had worked in partnership with the Liberia Media Center when I used to work there, and I had always admired him from afar. So at least years later on this platform, we get to be connecting, and I'm glad to have him here for the second time. Mr. Weah states in his profile that he has no relation to Liberian former President George Weah. So let me put it out there too. He is a civil society activist and a transitional justice scholar with over 18 years of experience. He co-authors Impunity on Attack, Evolution and Imperatives of Liberia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And he is a doctorate candidate at the Transitional Justice Institute at Ulster University, United Kingdom. He has investigated grassroots community memorialization of political violence perpetrated through massacres from 1979 to 2003. Aaron is the director of the Duke Institute, a Liberia-based think tank. Welcome on a new day, second time around, Aaron. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you, Priscilla. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's good to be back. I think it was last year, the earlier part of this year, or the latter part of that last year. Yeah, but it's good to be back anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So I know we talked about behind the scene, but I've said it a few times here. I've been corrected. Or part of the feedback I get is that you need to check out a little before you just jump into interview and start throwing questions at people. So I know we talked about it a little behind the scene, but just tell us. You say you are in the UK.
Yep.
Yeah. How is the weather there?
Well, it's in winter. It's cold. For a guy from Liberia, I think today it should be about 3 to 4 degrees. So
Oh my,
it's quite very cold. And
that is cool.
yeah, so I'm in the last phase of my program. I'm done with my dissertation. I'm just waiting for an exam in the UK system. You go through an oral examination where people read your work and they come and ask you about it, and before you are conferred with the degree. So that's the stage I am at now. So I'm waiting for that. Hopefully that will be very soon, and then I'll be going back to Liberia. But
Yeah.
otherwise, all is fine on my end. Yeah.
Okay. And you say it's the same time with Liberia. You're on the same time with Liberia.
Yeah. So in Liberia now, it should be almost 5:30. Here it's the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about 10:30 at my end, 10:28 a.m.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So in the next few months, oh yeah, it'll be early next year or next year, you will be Dr. Aaron Weah.
Yeah, I know in Liberia we're very obsessed. We're very obsessed with title, but I will. Yeah, I mean, if people want to insist calling me Dr. Weah, that's fine. But I mean, Aaron is always fine. Aaron is fine. Yeah, but Liberia, you know how in Liberia everybody get worked out with the PhD thing. But I don't mind people calling me Aaron. That's fine. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I remember when we started connecting, I specifically asked how you prefer to be referred to. You said Aaron is fine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what you do in this kind of this line of work where you've been trained as a scientist, you want people to engage more with the ideas you spend and weeks, months, years trying to research and you publish it. I mean, the fulfillment of every researcher and academic, and that you find the time, I know, to honor his work by putting in 1 or 2 hours to read it, and whenever you have an opportunity to engage with him. And people respect that a lot more than calling them doctor this, doctor that. I mean, if you can say, oh, I'm at a seminar presenting, and you read one of my work before and you want to ask me, I mean, that means a lot more to me because I mean, the practice of writing is, I mean, you do that all parts of the night. Is a lonely exercise. So if someone found the time to read your work and can engage with you, that is the greatest honor you can give to any researcher. The greatest honor you can give to any writer. Yeah, I read this particular paragraph or this particular thought. What do you mean by it? What is your interpretation? Then then you have more incentive to want to do what you're doing. Yeah, so in the West, I mean, people don't really bother about title much, really. It's not really anything. I mean, people, if you buy someone work or you go to their book launch, that's the greatest sort of compliment and honor you can give someone. And for me, that's really what matters a lot more than Liberia is we're big on titles, we're big on profile, we're big on prestige. So it will take a while before people get past that and deal with the most substantive issue, which is the issues of ideas and how ideas can shape society and how
Yeah,
idea can shape people and culture.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I agree. And that's what brought me to call on you because I read this article. Okay, so let me just announce to the audience. Thank you, Aaron. So, yeah, audience, Aaron recently wrote an article, and I'm going to share the link in a comment so that you can check it out. It's a very insightful article. And the title Prince Y. Johnson, The Great Escape. Is that the title, Aaron?
that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Prince Y. Johnson, The Great Escape. So today we will be reflecting on Aaron's article, which links Johnson's story to the broader themes of reconciliation, justice, and societal healing uh, uh, in Liberia. And Aaron is a global thinker. He's going to help us connect it to um, give it some global significance. But yeah, this align with the goals of a new day conversation, facilitating these kind of conversations. So some of the things we're going to be talking about, I'm just going to give you a few talking points so that you can stay with us and say, "Oh, this is interesting. Maybe let me hang around." We'll be talking about the duality of Prince Johnson life as a warlord, past, juxtaposed with his role as a preacher and politician, the role of ethnos nationalism and the memory in the Liberian politics, the politics of silence and justice, transitional justice and the war and economic crimes court that Aaron was here a few months ago to talk to us about. So we revisit some of the things we talked about and then latest development. So Stay with us, stay with us. There was just a lot of emotions or reactions on social media recently, Aaron.
Yeah.
And you follow it as well. When Prince Johnson, Senator Prince Johnson, passed away. Uh, so the late Senator Prince Johnson, should I refer to him as pastor? Was he referred to as pastor as well, or I'll just stick with senator? But yeah, so it was just, you know, for some of us, it was like an out of body experience, just following the other. It was just mixed, just following the different reactions, um, and then realizing that there is a lot to unpack. There is a lot that have been buried. There is a lot that we need to reckon with. So, yeah. So let's start with uh, um the first thing I wanted to start with. I know it'll sound redundant to ask you what has inspired you to do this, because this is something that you vested in anyway. So let's just go straight to, how do you reconcile Prince Johnson, a public image as a preacher of peace, with his wartime legacy of violence? That is the duality. Can you just look at why you think Prince Johnson was able to maintain such a strong influence in Nema County despite his controversial history?
So I think Prince Johnson in first we're dealing with a reinvented character. Prince Johnson left from Liberia in '92 after the Octopus. Late '92, maybe early '93, the exact date he left, uh, it's not it's not well known. He left and came back more than 10 years later, and my research show that Prince Johnson always had two audiences in mind.
Okay.
He returned with a country where he had, of course, he's Liberian, so he engages with Neymar separately, and he feeds Neymar with memories of 1980, the ethnic persecutions of ethnic Liberians, Guillots and Minors. And then with Liberians on the other hand, he engages with doctrine of forgiveness. And in Nigeria, he goes to the seminary. He he sort of, calling in his own words, turn his life around. But the contradiction here is, why would someone who turned their life around trade in such violent memories that he used to establish and consolidate his power in Nima County? Is that what a religious person would do? On the one hand, you engage into
Mm,
discourse of forgiveness, discourse of reconciliation, and
yeah.
on the other hand, you remind a certain people about why they should not forget, a certain violent period in their history, and you use that teaching, you use that violence as a basis, as the source of your power, as the source of trying to get re-elected. So in the duality, as you mentioned, of Prince Johnson's personality, there's a divided person here, and that divided person was deliberate. He wanted to maintain his control on Niba County, and so he uses memory as weapons, basically holding the Barians accountable. Say, you have to reward me for what I did on behalf of the people of Nimba. I did this for you, and you have to do this for me. And so
Oh,
it was sort of a quid pro quo sort of politics where he fed the county memories of the 1980s, memories of the 90s, and in exchange, he demanded power. He demanded to be the godfather of Nimba, and ultimately he became the kingmaker. So my article tried to really shed a light on the very complex personality that Prince Johnson represented. He was
mm,
very loud on reconciliation. He was very loud on let bygone be bygone. But then what he didn't amount to let bygone be bygone. He used the history. He used the violence. He appealed to the emotions of a ethnic of a clansman
wow.
to remember in a way that gave him so much power.
That's so interesting. Maybe for me, because I've never looked at it like that. Um, and so yeah, thank you for putting it that way. Like yeah, that's true. That one on one hand, it's like he wanted his deeds to be forgiven or forgotten, or it's like someone was avoiding accountability. But then at the same time, yeah, uh, um, I didn't, all along, I did not see it like that until now. So, yeah, thank you for that perspective. So, to what extent do you uh, think that the whole issue of ethno nationalism continues to shape Liberia's political landscape today? Um, it's something that was troubling for me when I was following the interaction or the reaction recently, where people talking about and I don't even want to mention it so as not to give it more life. It seemed like people were trying to flag two distinct groups, like the conflict is between these two groups. But I think it was a it was a national the crisis was it was Liberian civil war. So how did it get reduced to these two? Or people wanted to make it about them? So that's what brings me to the question: to what extent do you think ethno nationalism continues to shape Liberia's political landscape today?
Well, that's a good question. I think so. To what extent does ethnic nationalism or is it shaping Liberia today? If we look closely at that question, you will see one is the how much of this trend, how much of this pattern may be nationwide. Uh, I
Oh,
don't think it's nationwide per se, but
okay.
I think
You think it's
it's pro
just on social media?
it's yeah, I think it's pronounced in a few counties. So
Okay.
one, you see Nima County. I'm I'm very curious about the future of Nimba after Prince Johnson. What
Mm,
is the future of Nimba? The politics. What directions the politics uh, of Nimba always going to take? And Prince Johnson uh, has so much control. He influenced the politics of the county because of his own brand of politics. He represented uh, the immediate history of the county, and he used that. He leveraged that history. And so, will someone come to replace him? Will someone with the same seductive politics that we saw, with the same sort of charisma, with the same sort of cunning? Will we see that in Nimba? So the immediate future of Nimba is something that we should all watch. And then next door to Nimba, you have Granji that in 2023 we all saw the monument of Samuel Doe go up. And Samuel Doe monument going up was not by accident. It's a direct response
you're
to
talking about
how the
last year?
uh
Are you talking about last year, 2023?
yes, 2023. Was that 2023 or 2022? There was this guy who wrote Liberia in Terror.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
I have the book. You Ubuntu or
John Uboti.
yeah, I read.
He was at the center of organizing the
Mm,
erection of those monument, and you can see that earlier on. I think it was in 2005 after Prince Johnson became a senator. There was a monument of Prince Johnson that went up on the road from Ganta going to Seklepi, well, on the Ganta road.
um,
And the wordings of that monument says, "Here stand an evangelist, a diplomat, and or someone who fought for the peace and liberation of Nimba County." That was the wordings on the monument when I visited it last. It has been sort of remodified, and a more modern statue is there now, as you saw, as the pictures published in my. And so those monument has come up, and the wordings on those monument refer to him, as a Democrat, someone who gave birth. to multi-party democracy in Liberia. I mean, these two statues, these two monuments are in a conversation. They are in a dialogue. You cannot ignore that. I mean, the rise of Prince Johnson is a direct result of his his um, his bringing down of President Doe. So we see the wartime legacy of two persons shaping the future of two different counties.
Hmm.
In terms of ethnic nationalism, we've seen senators and representatives in Grangida in Nima County who are using that proudly as a business, as a campaign message to be elected. And the county is not indifferent. In Nima, just as in Grangida,
Hmm.
uh, Liberians have been elected, Nimbayans, Grangidians have been elected specifically because of their role in the county, in the Civil War, and their role in protecting the 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 coming to the defense and protection of their kinsmen. That's a strong form of ethnic nationalism beyond patriotism of a country. I mean, people have found a way to narrow down on the identity of where they come from and
Hmm.
using that as a basis of politics. Beyond these two counties, it's difficult to see. I mean, there are other forms of ethnicity that we see play out in places like Grand Bassa and elsewhere, but how it is directly tied to the conflict is really what I'm interested in. So, in terms of the extent to which ethnic nationalism may be shaping the politics in Liberia, one we have to see Nema is a Nema County is a big player in Liberia democracy because of the size, the demographics. It always is at the center of determining who become president. So the future of Nema is a keen interest to me now that Prince Johnson is dead. Who may take on his legacy and who may use it towards all the pragmatic end that he has used it is left to be seen. Or are we witnessing the death of warlord politics? Are we witnessing the death of the extent to which ethno-nationalistic politics may be in use? The same with Grangy there. We've seen the memorial of Dole that I've talked about. How much of these two counties, these neighboring counties that have been so much involved, the violence of the last 40 years, how much of it may shape the politics of Liberia at a certain level is something that we are yet to see. My last point on this is that we are now dealing with a very young society. In 15 years, in 20 years, uh, those of us who were born before the Civil War,
Hmm.
we have aged significantly, and we will now hand the country over to those born during the peace agreement and those born in the 90s. In 20 years, I mean, these would be people who would be in the 40s. These would be people in the early 50s, and our generation we have reached a point where. So, what does all of this memory of the war, especially where there is no museum as we have in South Africa, the apartheid museum, there is no history books written on the country, the Truth and Reconciliation report, because of the politics of it, it's not been taught in school, it's been shelved. So what we're really dealing with here is how effective the propaganda of Prince Johnson on the war has really been used to good effects to have a whole county depending on Prince Johnson's use of distorted memories. So my point is the extent to which Prince Johnson's message may have impacted a whole county. We might be seeing that not just now, but over the next 15 years in Liberia. How a young generation, kids 25 years old today, who never even saw Prince Johnson wearing military fatigue, but his message about the Civil War, his politics of ethnic nationalism may have impacted them so much that the next 15 years of Liberian politics might be shaped by this young generation believing and hanging on every word that Prince Johnson used.
Hmm.
Even though we know what happened in 1980 was essentially a falling out of two friends, Kwampa and Doe. It was just basically a disagreement, two friends who used the coup to take over. Uh, but that falling out took on ethnic proportions, and we from the 80s to today, we're still dealing with that ripple effect. The
Hmm.
design of that politic was not to go after two counties. It was basically two friends who 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 disagree, two friends
From different
who
counties.
exactly, and somehow the politics were able to establish a connection between the disagreement between two friends and have two counties involved. So I'm really concerned now about the young generation, those born in 2003 and after, and how much of the politics in Nimba is going to shape the political future of Liberia.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the places also, this kind of this maybe not at this level, Aaron, that you uh, uh, taking it from, but some of the conversations in some of the spaces that I've read into, and there are other people saying, "Oh, well, there is no need anymore for the war crimes score, and now they can save all that money to channel it into different and better initiatives because Prince Johnson is dead now and gone, as though the war crimes court was only about Prince Johnson." Anyway, what do you is that? What can you say about that? What can you say to people who think, I don't know why they think, but they think that it was about Prince Johnson. Now that he's gone, there's no need for the war crimes court.
You know,
Like,
this is where I disagree. This is where I disagree with a lot of people who constructed, uh, who saw, I mean, built an entire strategy of the war crimes code around Prince Johnson presumed culpability. Uh, the civil war in Liberia was complex. People got killed because friends betrayed them, family turned against another family, neighbors against neighbors. Uh, I mean, I was surprised when I was in Liberia in 2022. I was doing a research and I was studying the St. J massacre, and I was shocked to know that a whole feud between ethnic Vaz and Gola actually Traeger played a major role in the St. J massacre, where uh, there was a very derogatory word used against ethnic Vaz, a Vaz used against Golas that I uncover. I mean, I have this written up in a transcript. So the Liberian Civil War was very complex, very complex. Prince Johnson and few other persons may have been big players in that conflict, but it would be a poor reasoning to think that Prince Johnson was the only person or few other persons are the only people involved or who should be tried. I think the Liberian Civil War was very complex. We should use the opportunity of Prince Johnson's death to reflect more deeply on what opportunity do we have to look more closely at rebuilding the society and socially re-engineering the society for the better. One of the findings in the TRC final report was that revenge killing was very, very pivotal. Was a major part of the atrocities in Liberia. Revenge killing. People use the civil war as a cover to personally reach out to people who they have issues with and have
mm-hmm.
them killed, working through different warring factions to end the life of other people. So the war, the closer, the more I study the civil war, the more I look closely at the impact on today Liberia. You realize that we need a strong state to really deal with all of this. You need a strong state that put together a museum, for example, like you have in South Africa, the Apartheid Museum, where people get to study the effects of the war. You put together a strong general history text where young kids are growing up learning about the Civil War in the pages of history book that is validated by people who are trained to write this sort of text. And I mean, there's just so much that needs to happen in Liberia to deal with where we are today. You see, violence has been normalized. The burning of the legislature. People overlook that and do not establish a connection between the violence of yesterday and the politics of today. The two are very connected. Uh, Violence has been normalized. The issue of rape. There are things I see and read about in the papers in Liberia. These were not things when I was a kid growing up in the late 80s with my parents. You never would have and think about that. Even in the 90s, when the war started, I was like in fifth grade, fifth grade, we're in the sixth grade. There's things you never think about. And when I was a kid growing up, I mean, smoking weed was one of the worst stigma you will ever think about. Today, smoking weed is sort of a national duty. Everyone smokes weed in Liberia, and so
Oh,
you see that the violence, the vices of the civil war has found a fertile ground in today's Liberia, and it's been normalized, it's been accepted, and because we haven't been able to rebuild a society on the legacy of the conflict, what we have been able to do is to normalize that legacy and
mm,
makes it a part of our live reality today, and I think that's a problem.
yeah, Aaron. Unpack that a little more. If yeah, you say we've made it a legacy, how can we, sorry, address that? I can say it the way you said it, but you know what I mean, right? You just said something.
I think I follow. So what I mean about rebuilding, I know the rebuilding of the Liberian society, in my view, should be based on the foundation of
Justice.
the legacy, and the new foundation of the Liberian state should be based on the legacy of the conflict. You know, why did we go to war? Uh, I mean, all the lessons of the war should be used as the new roots of the Liberian society, but we haven't done that.
Mm,
Some of that is in the TRC report. All of it didn't make it in the TRC report. We should have used that more than 15 years ago. A new constitution has not been written. The TRC made some good recommendations about outlawing how we refer to this man as a countryman, this other man is an American Liberian, this
mhm,
man is a disappointed African. These stereotypes, these negative stereotypes, for example, we've never been able to outlaw them. Like one of the worst stereotypes you will find in the TRC report is referring to a Pele man as a stupid man, and one is the Bassa woman, saying which I would not say here. The
mhm,
Bassa woman is this.
mhm,
So these are things we overlook. These are things we overlook, but these are things that led to violence. Some of the estimated 200, they reported 250,000 persons that lost their life during the Civil War. How much have we learned from that? And how much have we used that legacy to rebuild the society? I don't think we've done that. Instead, what we've done, somehow that legacy of the violence found its way in the so-called peacetime, and it's been normalized. Drugs abuse, the disrespect between the younger and the older generation is just all over the place. You also have the younger generation today, those in the 20s and early 30s, some of the Liberians who have had the least preparation for the future. And that should worry anyone thinking about the next 15 to 20 years in Liberia. So we haven't studied the effects of the war. We haven't been able to rebuild our society using that lesson as a foundation to rebuild the society. And 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 as I mentioned, South Africa, right after 1994, South Africa wrote completely from scratch a new constitution, and that constitution was a response to the apartheid years, was a response to the violence, was a response to the old society, and say we deserve better. We're writing a new constitution. We
yeah.
haven't been able to do that. Now here we are about to trying to establish a war crimes code in the penal law system of Liberia, the legal system. There is no vocabulary of war crimes. It's not there, even though we sign up to conventions. So it should tell you how uh, the
Mm,
Liberians' view about a new society is just aspirational. We
yeah.
haven't been able. We are still decades away. We're still locked into the old way of thinking. We still have an old legal system that is as old as 1847, or
Mm,
maybe the little changes that were made in 1986, the Sawyer's Constitution. But
mhm.
for a country that saw so much violence, it is concerning that we've not even been able to begin by rewriting a constitution that speaks directly to the new reality of the society.
Mhm.
So the problem is really multi-layered. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Aaron. And like you said, a few years back, so I think it was 2020, right? During the COVID. I mean, GBV is pervasive already, but then I think it was the corona or something just amplified it in the last recent years. So some of the crimes that were being committed. I mean, like gang raping an elderly woman, grandmother, gang raping anybody is wrong, whether it's child, elderly woman, or what have you. But then we were having this discussion, women among ourselves, and then I said, um, I think I don't understand why we got to this level. I think it's because of the war, because of the level of violence we normalized, because of what was done, during the war. And then a sister or two got mad with me and say, "No, Priscilla, don't say that. Because of war, so people." That's not the reason people are doing this and doing that. When you're doing that, you're making excuses, and I didn't see it like that, but then that was how a few receive it. So I say I apologize. Um, but privately, I think, and you just mentioned it, the kind of level of violence we hear of today. And again, like you say, even the smoking, it used to be like a stigma. Like, don't just see ordinary cigarette. So yeah, sometimes I think it's the what we had in the war, and we haven't dealt with that. We haven't fully healed. But then I think some people don't like that when you say it. They think you're making excuses for the level of depravity we now see in our society.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Aaron, what do you think of also? Also can be like, there are some people I have issue with who haven't been remorseful at all. Um, and why someone expressing remorse doesn't excuse them if they have to face the consequences. For instance, maybe Joshua Blai, I think I heard he was one of the persons who apologized and they say, but then I'm willing to face whatever consequences. But there are some of our people who I haven't heard of. Maybe Prince Johnson was one of them. And but then people just sing this song. Let's let back on be back on. Let's just leave the whole thing and move forward. Even though people haven't acknowledged, um, in the case of Prince Johnson, he thinks he did a good thing. He did setting people a favor, or even the Liberian people favor. And somebody that Sekou Damati Konen to will be like, I've heard he went to the TRC and said, I liberated Liberia from Charles Taylor. So he thinks he too, he did a good thing. He should be rewarded and wasn't remorseful at all. I remember in the last community I lived in before I came overseas, and we lived in the community together, Sophie area. And this man just come in the community, Damati Konen, all owner of the yard, and be passing around and like, I'm the chief of this place. I liberated this country, and today you're living in peace, kind of way. I just really, when I saw him, I just, my reaction wasn't really pleasant towards him. And a couple of other um, politicians that I've heard hasn't haven't even shown any remorse. What do you think about, is it important, like some other thing it is, for people to say, oh, I'm sorry for this part and that part, or not? I
So
think
I think yeah, remorse is always uh, a good emotion to express that you you were wrong, or you did certain things at the time that you regret, uh, and you apologize for it. It's a good emotion to express. But international humanitarian law, war crimes, even with all of those remorse, uh, you could be charged. Someone whose father was killed, maybe under your command or by a warring faction tomorrow, could come and say, this person did this to me. So regardless of remote, can still be held accountable for what they did. But on the on the side of reconciliation, is a powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing. If you are if you've given much thought to your action, if you've given much thought to the human suffering that we all went through. I mean, I was a kid during the Civil War, or fifth grade, when the war came. So if you have a leader in the military who come back and say yes, even though the cause we fought for was legitimate, but the level of human suffering was it cannot be justified. And as a result of that, I'm really sorry for this. And if tomorrow I had to answer for what I did in court, I will accept that, but I apologize for that. That's a good place to start.
Mm,
That is a good place to start,
mm,
and it makes you humanize, you humanize your role in the conflict, and that was one of the limitation of the TRC process. It was used to justify some of the most unspeakable
mhm.
atrocities. There
Yeah.
was people refused to take responsibility for their actions,
Mm-hmm.
and so the TRC public hearing was not used for the internal purpose, and it angered a lot of people, and some people built a political career from there, and so some of the anger in the TRC recommendation is basically to it was a way of trying to come back and hold people accountable for
Mm-hmm.
what they did. But I think being remorseful doesn't expunge you for it doesn't absorb if you did war crimes, if you committed war crimes. But as a human and as a Liberian, and if you went through the Civil War and you saw things that as a kid saw, I think it's a good place to begin, regardless of what will happen to you tomorrow. Let's begin from there. That what I saw during the war. I mean, I saw my first human being killed, I think, in June 1990, as a from a distance. I always ask some of my friends who are psychologists, what changed in me that day? What did I what did I lose permanently? The
Mm,
fact that I saw my first human being killed from a distance, shot. I always ask for my friends who are psychologists who train in clinical psychologists, and what did I lose? And what
mm,
did I lose that day forever? And what was about me that changed that day? And but you can imagine other people who have even more horrible experiences with their loved one being killed right before them.
damn.
So the experiences vary from one person to the next, from one household to the next, and from one ethnic community to the other. So being remorseful is a good place to start in a process of national healing.
Healing. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, it doesn't excuse you. You face responsibility. You face the consequence of your action. But again, just to start from there with those that were affected by your actions. Um, So Prince Johnson, now we know that Prince Johnson stands on the War Crimes Court influence public perceptions of transitional justice in Liberia. His message of reconciliation, but at the same time, don't forget that I did good for you, kind of thing. Do you see his death as an opportunity for Liberia to reframe its approach to justice and accountability? If so, how?
Yeah, I think what has happened over the years, and this is not just in Liberia. When you have one big person, imagine, for example, you have Charles Taylor and Prince Johnson in Liberia. They overshadow, and that's what Prince Johnson did. He kind of overshadowed the entire strategy for accountability. And I think is unfair to a society that is in search of healing, that is in search of some direction to really to really deal with it. I think Liberia is a complex society. If you really look at why did the war come? If Doe, for example, was the main person that the war was brought about, Doe was killed on the ninth of September 1990. Why did the war progress to up to 14 years?
Hmm.
Why did the war progress? So we need to be in search of why was the civil war? Why did we have the civil war? Why did so many people die after the 9th of September 1990? The war should have stopped right there and then. Prince Johnson, Charles Taylor, and all the people involved should have said, "Hey, enough is enough." I mean, this was the main person we wanted to come, but the war was a little more complex than that. Though was used as an excuse for
Hmm.
other people who had other reasons
Agenda. Yeah.
to wage the civil war. And so they used this opportunity to design a transitional justice program that is much more faithful to the layers of complexity in the Liberian society. Why did so many people get killed in the Liberian civil war?
Hmm.
Uh, let's look at Lofa. There are 200. The total size of massacres in Liberia is 226 sites of massacres from 1979 to October 2003. I've been working on this for the last 4 years. In Lofa County alone, you have about 36 sites of massacres in Lofa. In River Sets, you have about 29 sites of massacres. In Grand Kipma,
Bring him
you have
out.
25 sites of massacres. In Bapolu, you have 19. Why? Was so much, atrocities in counties that were not connected to the civil war.
Yep.
Why was there so much killing in Grand Kipma, for example? Why
Or
was there so much fighting in places like Lofa and and a place such as Riverses? So these are questions that we all need to genuinely find answers to as part of the overall healing of the Liberian society. You know, Prince Johnson, yes, were big actors in this, but the complexity of the Liberian society go beyond Prince Johnson, go beyond President Doe, go beyond these different warlords. They were not just and Charles Taylor. It goes beyond them. It goes look at today. Look at communities in Liberia. Are communities any safe today than they were in the 80s? No, I think communities Liberians have developed so much mutual hatred for each other. People don't get along well, and people who do not have much history of conflict, you just see someone and you just develop some level of enmity against them. We need to understand why is the country why has the country become why have we become so adversarial in our relationship today? You know, are this legacy from the Civil War passed
mm,
on, and unsuspectingly passed down to us
mm,
Liberians today? Why have we become so adversarial, even in the diaspora? The
mm-hmm.
same practices are back home. You go in the diaspora, you see Liberians, and
Yes.
they're still fighting each other over very little things, very minor things,
Mm-hmm.
and people are attacking each other. So, what is shaping this sort of new attitude in Liberia? So for me, when I say it's a complex society, I really mean that literally, and that we should all these big players, we should go beyond them and see the society for what it is. Let go beyond Prince Johnson for a minute. Let go beyond all of those named in the TRC report, because those named in the TRC report wouldn't have committed the level of atrocity they committed if they didn't have collaboration with people within communities, if they
Mm.
didn't have the support from other Liberians who use them to get a few things done. So my point is, let's go beyond people like Prince Johnson, for example,
Mm.
and see the society for what it is. I think we have a very complex society.
Yeah. And thank you, Aaron. You articulated it just like I didn't know how to, but that's what I meant when I was asking from the beginning. When I started seeing those reactions, I'm like, why are they limiting it to two group of people? Because it was a civil war for the entire country. And you've said here before on this platform, like, and then you mentioned it again. You say yes, it was a conflict between two friends from two different counties, and then they got, that's why the counties, the two counties are standing out. But also, it was a nationwide crisis because you mentioned here before, people were pointing each other out. People were killed in neighborhoods. They were not in the counties. Um, and then talking about the sites of atrocities. Um, we so when you were with, what was the program you were with? The Transitional Justice, something you were doing in Liberia and partner with Liberia Media Center, and then we were visiting
With the International Center for Transitional
in-
Justice.
International Center for Transitional Justice, and we're visiting those counties, and it was just mind-boggling for me. The two counties that I wept until I got sick on those trips were Grand Cape Mount and Lofa. Like the level of killing or the atrocities, the stories you heard, the sites we visited, and then St. J as well. So yeah, it wasn't just two group of people. It was just all over the place. This is more complex beyond Prince Johnson and Samuel Doe, the late President Samuel Doe, even though they were major players, and I empathize with the size, but I'm glad that you able to zero that in, that this is a national crisis and it's us, and why are we so adversary towards one another, even in the diaspora? Because that was going to bring me to my last question as we wrap up about the trauma, that what can Liberia do to address the generational trauma, because I think again, maybe it will sound like excuse, but I think it's trauma that caused by figures like Johnson and the war as a whole. What can we do to address that? And yeah, and what steps are essential for us to break from the shadow of warlord politics?
So let me get the first question. How can we deal with the generational trauma, right? And
Yeah,
then how can we deal with
thing caused by the war, and then yeah. But I think
you
you
said
actually address how we
you
can.
s- you said something about warlord politics.
Yeah, what steps are essentially, and you mentioned it in passing, but any practical one for the ordinary person to understand, how can we, what are the steps that are as essential for us to break free from the shadow of warlord politics?
Well, I think the two questions are sort of connected.
Okay.
One is the generational trauma. There has to be first the state has to be involved in how society reflect on the legacy of the conflict, how we able to learn a lesson from the conflict. Let's begin first with the National Museum in Liberia. If you go to the National Museum and nothing tells you that this is a country where the fetus of a woman was extracted and the woman was killed. That some of the unspeakable horror in the 20th century was done in Liberia. There is
Mm,
nothing emotionally arresting about the museum in Liberia. I mean, I've traveled to countries where you would think, I always thought of myself as someone who's emotionally strong, mentally very strong. But when I visited the Apartheid Museum in South Africa, I mean, I was surprised at how much a hit it had on me. By the time I came outside, uh, I was there with my wife in 2017. Before then, I went back. I was there much earlier, and I went, and I always go to the museum. I mean, it is put together so well. I mean, you're talking about generational trauma. This is where in South Africa that we have the post uh, Accra Agreement generation. In South Africa, they refer to them as the born free, those born after 1994, the generation that had no connection or no live experience with apartheid, the apartheid struggle. So you see that the society have put together, and every time you go to that museum, you pay like 15 rand, 15 to 20 rand, 15 to 20 rand, I think should be what, $5, $6, and it's one place where society get to see itself in the mirror. And
mm,
some people go there and say, did this really happen in South Africa? We do not have such a place in Liberia where we really ask this deeply existential question about, did this really happen here? Who did this and why? That's where the collective learning of society comes from. from
Mm.
these processes of memorial. George Weah, in his latter days of this presidency, I thought he did a good thing with this memorial on the PHP role. My only critique with it's such a nice public space. It's a nice park, and most of the people going there are very young Liberian kids. But why didn't this government work with a team of specialists to give this thing the historical depth that such a site requires? And the sort of historical depth that you go there, even though you're having a nice, it's a very picturesque part of Monrovia. You go
Mm.
and see the ocean waves, you go there, but the history of that place cannot be ignored and should not be ignored. And I thought that was a very brilliant opportunity to ground that park, in the history that it requires. But we do not have it. Is there an opportunity for the current government or future government to use it to turn that place and give it the sort of historical appeal that it deserves? A place for learning, a place for reflection, a place for mourning. I think it's still an opportunity to do that. And so I think these are some of the missed opportunities that we've had over the last few years that we continue to have. Yeah, economic transformation is good, but economic transformation that is not on the foundation of yesterday's violence sometimes it's meaningless. You can have all of the economic transformation. It's like you living in the house of your father who has a big job, but his sense of parenting is not here nor there. I mean, so you have all of that money coming into the house. The foundation is very weak. So the same is true for a poor man who doesn't have real money but is raising his kids on all the strong values of a strong work ethic,
Mm.
values of law, value of respect. So compared to someone who has who comes from a family with a lot of money, and compared to you who father is just someone who's just doing a basic job and barely can afford. If you use these two different scenarios as Liberia, you will see that Liberia needs the latter example. So we can have all of the economic transformation that we want, but if we do not spend time reflecting on the history of why we went to war, the history of why family went against family, why neighbor turned against neighbor, why a student killed a teacher, or a teacher went after a student and killed a student. This is really the nuts and bolts of the Liberian Civil War. That's how bad the Liberian Civil War was. It was
Oh,
not just about Prince Johnson. It was
yeah.
not just about these 12 warring factions we had. It was basically about the Liberian society using the civil war as an opportunity to go after
Mm.
people who they thought they needed to go after. So the generational trauma you talk about is very important because we now have about 65 to 70% of the population in Liberia are those who are 30 years and below. This is a generation that had the least preparation for the future, and this is the population, the demographics that will be determining how the society is run within the next 10 years in Liberia. So, if there is not an opportunity to really reflect on what went wrong in Liberia, yeah, I think we have a problem. What we saw recently at the Capitol building, that will just be the beginning to a new future in Liberia.
Aaron, I was going to in here, but now you just reminded me of the Capitol building something. I don't know whether I was playing devil, should I say angel advocate, devil advocate, being naive, trying to be open mind. I don't know. But I was thinking, did someone actually set it on fire or was it a mechanical problem? Because I saw someone was talking about, oh, they don't maintain those things. When was the last time so has it really been established? Because I didn't hear that. The next thing I heard is that they passed a budget for fixing.
Well, I don't have. I mean, we all need to read the police report that come out of this. I think there should be a full investigation.
Yeah.
But if you follow the discourse that have come from the legislature, oftentimes you will see honorable men standing up, some of them going face to face. If you play that scene over and over, and eventually you see the smoke coming from the rotunda, there is a connection between there is
Yeah.
a connection between that way and the civility in the house. has broken down several times, and then you have this high stakes politics between two speakership. You can only appreciate, that
the assumption.
one side, has decided to take matters in his own hand,
Okay.
and all sympathizers of this politics on other side decided that all right, we should take this to another level. So again, it brings me back to the point about our failure to learn from the destructive fall of our civil war, and just open up so many possibilities of repeating the past of yesterday to today.
Okay. Lastly, what did you name your title, your article, Escape, The Great Escape? Agency, The Great.
Well,
They may
so
have passed away. The man is not escaping anything, is he?
so I think ideally, I mean, someone like me who has done this work for this is 20 years now since I started doing work on transitional justice. Ideally, you will want to see Prince Johnson in a court answering the questions of his role in the conflict, just for the sake of posterity, not
Mm-hmm.
not basically to see him in prison, but just that's what a society and a normal society would do. But that Prince Johnson died of natural causes, ideally sound like he has made one final escape, a last escape, because, and I use that title also because uh, there were different periods in his own life where he was almost killed and he somehow escaped. The octopus
Yeah, I read.
incident, he fled and went to Nigeria. He almost escaped, and then during the first 2 years where he broke away from MPFL and made his way to Liberia, there were instances where he could have gotten killed, and so dying 7 months after the executive order was passed to establish a war on economic crimes court. I just thought there would have been no other befitting title,
Mm,
than something that sounded like a great escape. So like it may have been a prayer, God, better you take me than for me to stay in court and answer to charges. So it just felt like a great escape. Prince Johnson finally uh, leaving on his own terms.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your insight. I appreciate your time. Do you have
thank you.
any final? Is there something that you thought I should have asked? Please go ahead, share with us.
No, I think your question is very thoughtful, and I think those who listening to this will have a lot to take away. But in final, I would just say that this Liberian society has changed in 20 years, in 21 years, so dramatically that we now have. I never for a while thought that I would be in a place where I would be so older, than majority. I mean, today I'm in a minority. I'm part of the pre-war generation and the post-war generation. Those born in the 90s and the millennials are those now about 70% of the population. And I'm really concerned that you have this huge majority, the Liberians who are now in a position to determine at every election who become president,
Mm,
are those who are the least prepared. When I finished high school in Liberia, as low as the standard was becoming, it was still far better than what we have today in Liberia. It was
mm,
still far better than what we went to school. We if you pass downtown Monrovia today, you will see all you see is telephones. You do not see young kids having novels in their pocket, reading novels, reading African writer series. Nobody's doing that. We do not even have bookstores in Lib. So we the society has been taken over by this whole new young generation with very little preparation, and a young generation that is coming of age, where I think the concept of the family is dying in Liberia. I think the concept of the family. 2002, I went across the country doing my research, and I was riding on the motorbikes because I went to communities where vehicles just couldn't go, and on the motorbikes as I was riding, I'm asking these kids about their own. I mean, some of the distances I was covering on the motorbike, Took me like 30 minutes, long enough to have a conversation. And some of the kids I was riding with, like 19 years old, 21 years old, I asked them if they had a girlfriend, and the kids would laugh and say, yes, oh, big brother, I have about 2 kids. I have 3 kids. This kid is not married. He has 3 kids on on a motorbike salary. So, and every kid I roll with on a motorbike, I asked them this set of questions. And there was almost no kid I met who didn't have a child. If you look at this across the country, if you look at this on a scale, you'll be frightened about the new problem, that is on the horizon. You have kids having kids out of family structure. There is the whole concept of a family, and is dying. And with strong family, you have strong communities. With strong communities, you have a better society. But we have the reverse in Liberia. We have weak family or a dying concept of a family, and naturally you can appreciate why you have a little or no community. People don't care about each other in community. And that's no wonder why you are having the quality of legislature, you're having the quality of senators we are having, because they're coming from the filth of the society. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to describe, the breakdown in our social system. They are coming from that place because if you have strong family, if you have strong family, you will naturally produce a strong community. And if you have a strong community, because every parent want to have his kids, the right influences in the kid's life, but we don't have that today in Liberia. And so I'm really concerned when you talk about generational trauma and generational healing, and I look back at the Liberian society, uh, it feels that we've reproduced the wrong society. 21 years after the peace agreement, we've reproduced the wrong society because everything had just been on this transactional politics, putting aside the moments of peace and reconciliation when we could have taken the TRC report and make do of the best that we could have done with it, using that to rebuild and socially re-engineer the society. But 21 years later, we have produced a society that may take us down a path that we may all be very sorry. And that looks a lot more. I mean, it's bad to end on this note, but it's difficult to read a society otherwise.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, I agree with you. It's bad to end on, but we can lie to ourselves. We need to look in the mirror and look at the ugly truth of our image. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Priscilla, and I look forward to our next meeting, maybe next year or whenever there's an opportunity.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Someone said Gerald. Is that Gerald? Kanu. He said, "You are so right, Mr. Weah. This is also the case in Sierra Leone. I don't know what he referring to." Chris Carter said, "I'm following your show live from San Nicolas, Nima County." Someone said, Theodosia has a watching from Lansdowne, PA. And Yancy, Nimba County will remain strong in the Liberia political system, even with the death of Prince Johnson. Um, Maurice Kemon, hi Aaron, long time. So that's just a few comments. We're going to go now, people, and let Aaron go about his business. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us on a new day. Thank you for being a change and for sharing your day with us, Mr. Aaron. We are thanks to our viewers for joining us as well. Let's continue the dialogue, elevate our voices, and actively participate in shaping a world where social justice isn't an aspiration alone, but a reality. Like Aaron said, it's just sad to end on the notes we're ending on. But hey, we need to get to the point to be uncomfortable in order to, we need to face the reality of our situation in order to address it. We cannot avoid this. We need to face the ugly image in the mirror and see how we can fix that image. So, as we leave from this conversation, let's just think about how we can, we move from this point. We want healing for our country. We want to be better people. We want to be light on a global scene, Liberians. So yeah, that's the conversation for today. Join us next time on A New Day as we continue to explore and advocate for social reform. Remember, change begins with conversations like these. So let's make every day a new day for progress. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you, Aaron. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.